So today on MyFlora Fridays, super excited to have these two fellows with me, Brian Bachnack and Matthew Gibbons. I just had the pleasure of meeting you at the SUNY Niagara conference up in Niagara Falls and saw your amazing book. Super duper, well, there we go. Super impressed by it. I had to purchase it like immediately. Just, it's a fantastic book. And you guys have done an awesome job. And this is kind of like probably going to end up being, a good chunk of what we talk about today. But notice that your names are not on this book, which I think is really interesting. And you can talk about that. But you guys know yourselves better than I know you, obviously. So if you could maybe first, Brian, talk about who you are, what you do, and why you are in the cannabis space. And then Matthew, you can have the floor and tell people, or you can go back and forth, whatever, however you want to structure that.
Okay. Yeah, no, that sounds great. Appreciate that. And thank you, Anna, for having us on. It's awesome to be a part of this podcast. And yeah, it was great meeting you at the SUNY Niagara event. What a great event that was in general. It's awesome getting with all the like-minded people in the industry. Every time we get the in-person events, we always end up connecting and just bringing our mission forward, right?
Yeah.
But so what got me really into the cannabis space is actually I was an athlete for a long time before and used medical cannabis, while being an athlete. And actually, Matthew and I have been really good friends since about sixth grade. And so when he first got into growing, wanted to kind of get into growing to be a source of medical cannabis, right? At the time, it was kind of a vague time where we didn't know where to get reasonable cannabis that was medical grade. And so Matthew took it upon himself to start experimenting and growing himself. And so started off as a patient. And then right around COVID time, actually, I was in and out of the grows that Matthew ran for years when I was back and forth from hockey. Right at COVID time, ended my hockey career, and Matthew was already working on the book and started writing the yield science book and wanted to bring me on as someone to help bridge the gap in sales and in the community outreach aspect. We felt like just even right from the start of the book, not having a name on it, like you mentioned, and wanting the book to be something that people took for what the information was and not just what the authors were and who we were. With us being a little bit younger and just with the mechanics of how people are, we felt like putting the information out there and being really put your money where your mouth is, right? And kind of show the facts and then let people digest it and see what their thoughts were would be better than just putting our name on it and being kind of grow famous. So that was kind of how I got into it. Matthew was a huge part of that, and I'll let him tell his story.
Yeah. But yeah, as echo what Brian said about just wanting access to reasonable cannabis that was high quality and be able to make sure that, people that we cared about had access to that as well. And obviously enjoyed the medical aspects of cannabis myself. So I've seen, the promise of it and what it can do for people and wanted to make sure that people had access to that. And, always wanted to just, if you're going to do anything, typically want to be the best you can at it. So for years, I would just be trying to solve like different plant physiological questions to achieve better results. And I'd be laying in bed awake at night, just thinking about it for years. And then finally hit a point about like 7 years into my growing career that we were just hitting some really impressive results and wanted to turn around and kind of give that information back to other people. Cause I was just, I'd go maybe like days trying to answer one question. And then when I finally found, the research that I needed and then was able to prove it by performing it in the garden, I was just like, man, what if there was one source that all this information could be accessible to people? And if they had that starting out, where would they end up? Because when we started out, there was like not very good information. It was hard to find for reasons that we all know why. And it's exciting to see the universities now being able to do more and more testing with it, because who knows how much further that's going to take us and take the plant and what the plant can do for people. So wanted to just make a resource that we wish we could have had when we started out, to try to just
Hmm.
help the next generation and see where they can take it from there, you know?
Yeah, this book, and I love that you took the approach where you didn't want to put your names on there because you didn't want to be like you didn't want people judging you for you wanted people to judge the content, like, because if I put my name on something, people trust that it's gonna have good content, but that took like a ton of work, like all of this shit to build up that trust. But this book speaks for itself. Like,
Mhm.
nobody, well, I don't know, maybe people are wondering like who the fuck wrote this book, this is awesome. But I really like that approach. The other thing that I'm interested in is, like, everybody has the Grow Bible, right?
Mhm.
And everybody has, Ed Rosenthal's book, but like this is kind of like the new updated version for cannabis growing today, which in many respects has changed significantly from even 10 years ago. We know a lot more about lighting, nutrients. We have a lot more of that stuff available to us. There are so many products now that are specifically tailored to cannabis, which, as I understand it, is not like growing strawberries or lettuce or, other crops. And so to have a new updated book with really good information in it, I think is just incredibly important, useful. So can you guys talk a little bit about how you came up with the content, how long it took, and what you were trying to improve on from what, those books that everybody has sitting on their shelves?
Yeah, I'll take that if you want.
Well, I
Yeah.
guess the big thing that I wanted when looking at those books was obviously there's such a difference of the technology, right? Now it's
Hmm.
not just growing it with a simple wadded light. We now have LED lights. You have automatic watering systems. You have all these different technology waves that no one is able to really touch on at all. And then also the pictures aspect. All of the original stuff was forms, and then some of the books that weren't really plant touching, they were really more just plant specific, where we wanted to really make it to where if someone was to read the book, they were able to go back and check out the pictures, look at it and kind of see, hey, these are real pictures, these are real charts, to where when they're looking at their plant in their garden, they'll be able to mimic some of those things and make those changes. Where some of the older books, they just were a little bit outdated. Like you said, things have kind of changed pretty fast in the last 10 years, just with the amount of technology that kind of goes into the garden. So really wanted to hit a lot on that. And then also kind of take it back from a little bit more of just the research approach of how things read and more of like application based. I feel like Matthew did a really good job of talking when explaining to people in the book on how to do things, to where it was really simple and where that the common person was able to take in that information and then apply it. There's the home growers, there's people that are growing in commercial cultivation, getting ready to grow in commercial cultivation, and also just the hobbyists at their house. So we wanted it to be really available for all those people, but yet still proven and backed by those science-based practices that we know that work, but also being something to where it wasn't so hard for them to digest, right? I think that's a hard part about some of the studies is, and Matthew can touch on this. I mean, it's taken
Yeah.
time to just really digest some of what those studies were. A lot of the studies that we're going off of actually came from tomato studies. So you're having to learn some of those things and then apply it to the plant. So that was really my big take on it.
And adjust any nuances based on what you find applying those principles. But we were lucky too that cannabis studies have been rising. But yeah, the book process and creating it, it was a 5 year process. When we first began, we were running all double ended. We were hitting about 4.25 pounds per light at that time. And that was one of our, indicators that we do have information that would help others have success. And then, throughout that process of researching, and I mean, there's so many things that we upgraded throughout that time because we do the research, and the numbers would tell you that you could definitely yield higher with more efficient LEDs. So we ended up doing that upgrade and definitely seen the results. And so we added that. We were able to add that to the book, and then still have the double-ended information because it is a very viable light source for cultivators. So yeah, but it was about a 5 year process. I mean, we spent probably 60 different days even just taking photos of the plants and everything. I mean, it was a long journey for sure, but we didn't want to put anything out there that, you know, wouldn't provide value. Like if it wasn't going to provide value to people, then, there wouldn't really be a point in doing it. So we wanted to make sure that we put all the effort that we would hope a book that we would purchase that would get put into that book, so that, we really just did right by people. We wanted to make sure that people benefited, were happy that they found the book and applied the stuff, and had greater success as a result of that process.
So, are you saying that you actually did test these things that you have in this book versus the old way of doing things to make sure that your information was not just stuff that other people had told you, that it works in the field?
We would, probably in like the last year, like we had done most of our tests. We had just nonstop testing all information that we brought in for sure, because we wouldn't want to put something in there that we hadn't tested at least for like 3 harvests or maybe 6 harvests, and was able to compare the data to make sure that.
Along with our testing, both of our rooms that we have, our R&D rooms, are completely identical with the same amount of lights and the same amount of footprint. While we were doing the book for the last 2 years, all of our testing was through the same two genetics. So we did a lot of this. The book was all of the same structure, same light source, same genetics. So we really did a lot of testing before we put out any of the information to make sure that we were putting out real stuff.
Yeah.
So I would be like not concerned. I don't want to use that word. That sounds bad. But I would wonder if you only use two different genetics to do all this testing on. So I would be wondering, like, do you think any of the information in the book is specific to the genetics that you used and may not be as applicable to all of the different diversity of cannabis sativa that's out
Mm-hmm.
there, CBD types included, autos, photos, regulars, fems, plus all the different strains, the polyploids, the, polyhybrids that we have. Do you have any concerns about that, or have you gotten enough feedback from the community that your shit's good?
Yeah, definitely got enough feedback, and also, by that time we have grown over 100 different cultivars, and these two seem to be, and we've grown hundreds of cultivars in with these practices, and at the end of the day, when you have a sound environment, there's like there's fundamentals that as long as you get those right, things are going to be good. Cultivars are going to desire certain things in a certain way, but this is a good baseline to start, and then you can move, whichever way you need to from there. But yeah, we've tested hundreds of different cultivars, gotten feedback from thousands of growers, and yeah, we haven't, had any negative, connotations with maybe like a certain cultivar or a certain type of plant didn't react well to the principles that we were providing people. When we wrote the book, we wanted to make sure that we gave people the why or the background information so that they could then make informed decisions based on their own setup, what their genetics are telling them. And so we didn't just say, hey, you do this, this, and this, and that's all you do. We gave them the why, the plant physiological explanation, so that they were able to tweak or adjust and add to that basis of knowledge for themselves in their own setup. Because every setup's a little bit different, every cultivar a little bit different, but there are fundamentals that apply across the board with cannabis sativa.
Mm-hmm. I myself, full disclosure, am a terrible grower of most plants just because I don't like putting in the effort. I'm kind of a set it and forget it kind of girl. And I have not read your book from cover to cover. Of course, I've flipped through it and thoroughly enjoy every time I turn to any page, really. I'm the kind of person who's going to seek out whatever information that I'm looking for specifically, and this book seems to have it no matter what it is. When I was doing my research, my PhD research, um, something that I looked at was the same genetics that were produced in different environments, allegedly because they came from different batches or from different states, of course. Somebody asked me during my defense, like, how can we get a more consistent product if people are using different environments and there's no standard growing conditions? What would your thoughts be on saying, okay, if you have this genetic and you grow it under these conditions, this will be your product. If you stray from those conditions, like, and every grower some growers are not artists, but a lot of growers out there I would consider artists. They very much put their own spin on all kinds of things when they're growing and to improve the product, right? So of course people are going to stray, or if something goes wrong, that's a stray from a standard condition. But do you think that would be a good idea, bad idea, or neutral depending on the what you're looking for?
I think it would be awesome. I think it'd be maybe difficult to achieve because if they're not all dealing with the same phenotype or like clone from one cultivar, then there's definitely gonna be variation right then and there,
Hmm.
without a doubt. So yeah, I just don't see that being super feasible unless everybody was getting the same clones, the exact same phenotype.
Yeah, we don't have the same setup as we do with other crops where our breeders have honestly had the incentive to stabilize their genetics and breed out all of the undesirable traits. It's really just cross some things that you like, do a pheno hunt, and then that's your phenotype. That's what you are going to put out there onto the market, usually in the form of a clone. If it's seeds, then people say F1, and that's a little bit, I don't know how to feel about that because yes, it is an F1 generation because you've got two parents and then it's the filial generation. But if those two parents are not homozygous or very, stable in their genetics, then those F1s are all going to be variable, just like your parents, presumably, are not inbred and your sisters and brothers are all going to be different. So, but, I have my own company that we've been working on this for a while, where we can bring some incentivization and some market maturity to the cannabis space, even though it is a federally illegal plant. But I feel like that's where we need to get is getting some protections for breeders where they have the incentive to do that extra work that costs a lot of money and resources to get a stable genetic line. But then when they put it out there, they can get some licensing royalties and some contracts in place where people just aren't stealing their genetics and renaming them, growing them without any. Do you have any thoughts on that?
You want
It'd
to go,
be
Brent?
great to do that. I just think that it's so hard to regulate it, and that's why people haven't gone through the time and the money that it would cost to get there, just because of how easy it is to get that and rename it and things like that. With just the way that we're still in such an infancy of the industry still, and getting everything regulated. A lot of these things, just there's so many task really the industry is still trying to knock out. I feel like that's one that's hard because you put a lot towards it, and it could easily get renamed or taken.
Well,
But
I've been working on this for 4 years, and we're just about to launch my company called True Cut, which is exactly what that is. We've got Cookies and Brothers Grimm and some other companies that are signing on, and some legacy growers. We've made it super affordable for them to join and get in our system to then be able to say, this is mine and register it and have a genetic and a digital fingerprint of that history. Pretty excited about it. I was talking to you a little bit before the show about, and I want to get your take on it. The company that I'm working with and that is supporting MyFlora Fridays is MyFlora DNA. I joined them to help them a little bit with marketing and stuff like that. But I thought I'm a terrible grower. I can look at a room full of plants and I can see what's wrong with them, but there's so many things, there's so many symptoms that you can look at in especially cannabis. There's a lot of things that share a set of symptoms, and it could be a pathogen, it could be, pH, it could be a nutrient issue. And so I thought that, growing is pretty expensive anyway, testing is expensive. And wouldn't it be nice if you could look at your plants and say, oh, my plants are yellow. What are the pathogens I should test for? And so I came up with pathogen panels. So there's a wilting, there's a yellowing, there's a leaf spot, a mosaic, and it tests for those pathogens that would create those symptoms. And if it comes back negative, then you got to go off in a different direction. But if you've got a pathogen, then you need to address, that issue. Um, Working so closely with cultivators as you do, and as cultivators yourself, is that And the price point is basically the same as a single test, but you get three tests. So it's like coverage. Like now, what do you think about that?
I 100% think that there's a need for that, and especially as we grow and move close farther or closer and closer to the commercial space, having that safety net of knowing exactly what it is, because obviously in some of these cultivations, there's five, managers that actually make decisions on the plant training and things like that,
Hmm.
to where just having that insurance of the tests, being able to really know what it is and then get your team on fixing that. I think there's a huge advantage to that, especially I think you said at the price point of $18 for three
Hmm.
tests. I mean, I don't know where you're going to beat that. We try to go off of, making sure that we're not making decisions just off of guessing, right? And so you're taking away a lot of that guessing. So I just think that there's a huge value in that, especially at some of these bigger cultivations where it's really difficult to kind of dial in exactly what's going on when you're running a huge number of plants.
Right. And the last thing you want it to be is a pathogen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do,
100%.
do you, so I heard somebody talking about pathogens the other day, and I don't remember who it was. And I'm not even entirely sure that they were in the United States, but basically they said that they know cultivators that just don't care if they have pathogens.
Yeah. We haven't really come across many growers like that. A lot of growers that we have had contact with, they're all about the plant, so they wouldn't be able to go to their grow each day and you know be seeing pathogen issues and not doing taking steps to correct that. So we haven't personally seen that. We would never partake in that. If the plant isn't 100% healthy, like we're not going to be able to sleep well that night. We don't believe in that whatsoever. Because at the end of the day, the better the plant is, the healthier the plant is, the better the product that is produced by that plant is going to be for the person consuming it. We wouldn't want to work with anybody that's not partaking with that.
And yeah, I mean, the obvious thing to me, and I don't get it at all, why somebody would have that kind of attitude is that these pathogens reduce yields and reduce chemical production. So you're losing mass and potency, for lack of a better term, and potentially terpenes and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So you're like shooting yourself in your foot by
Mm-hmm.
not giving it. And for HLV, it's not a matter of if you get it, it's when at this point, right? Would you agree with that or no?
Us personally, maybe not, but we haven't had the experience. When you're growing that number of plants in these systems, I can definitely see where it's something that could be a bigger issue. But yeah, in our own experience, we haven't had the experience with that specific pathogen, but we have heard from people about it for sure.
Yeah.
The new systems that are in place in certain states where the plant counts don't come into effect, that's where these issues are arising more and more. Where we are in our cultivation, we have a plant count. So our system, we want to optimize the plants that we do have. Where, in my experience, a lot of the cultivations that have some of these more issues and are just kind of letting the pathogens kind of linger and don't really care as much are more on the entrepreneurial side where they're looking at the plant as money, where a lot of the growers that we deal with are looking at the plant as medicine. And I think
Hmm.
that there's a huge disconnect between those two people. And that's what we're seeing in the industry is that there's people that have came into the industry and they're more focused on a financial gain, where there's other people in the industry that are literally looking for to make the best gains of the plant for the people. And so we're really aligned with those people. And so that's kind of a lot of our experience. But there are those people out there that are, running a lot of plants and numbers and don't really, care per se about the end, you know, yield, because they're just turning burning, right? They're just going
Hmm.
again to the next crop, the next crop, to the next crop, get it sold, get it gone. Not really too
Hmm.
concerned about actually improving their grow, improving the yields, improving the potency, improving, the quality of cannabis.
I have been on a couple of panels where we've talked about yield and quality. And I do have to say that higher yields does not always equal better product or higher quality, right? And I kind of see it like you could think of it as small batch, or craft beer. It's more expensive, but you get a better product. But there are those operators who, they want you to hit a certain number of pounds. They want you to hit a certain number, of THC percent. But I don't know. I feel like those are two different sides of the cultivation industry. Do you want to be an MSO and pump out lots of shitty weed, or do you want to really care about your craft and produce smaller quantities of really, really excellent, high quality product?
We have we've gotten the privilege of getting around some really good cultivators, and there are some MSOs that are doing a really good job of kind of bridging that gap and being the in between. One of our good friends, Justin from Bee Leaf in Missouri, we went and toured their facility, and they're a bigger cultivation, and they were doing an amazing job of making sure that the quality was there and making sure that they're taking those steps. And again, I think it's also just having those systems in place, and each each facility is going to be a little bit different until we kind of get that education up and each state rolls out, the certain standard.
Hmm.
We're going to see a lot of lopsided ways to go about it, really.
Hmm. Hmm. You want to add to that, Matthew?
I think you did a great job there.
All right, so back to the book. What was it's a great book. I love it. What was your favorite part of, like, what did you enjoy most about writing this book? Like, which part is your favorite part? And which part of the book do you think people really gravitate towards and like they're like, wow, this is cool.
Mhm. So yeah, chapter 1 through 3, and then chapter 7 are definitely, some of my favorites because a lot of these books too, like back in the day, they talk about maybe how to grow the plant or how much water this or that, but they're not giving great information about how to actually set up an indoor environment that is going to be successful for your plants. So chapter 1, we covered lighting, which is definitely your most important indoor factor. You got lighting and genetics is always going to equal your potential yield, and every other factor that you get right or wrong along the way is going to determine your actual yield. But so chapter 1 is lighting, setting up an optimal light environment for the plants and all the considerations that come into play there. Chapter 2 is about all about the equipment, and we cover every aspect. We also cover application too, like sizing, placement in the room, how to get the best results, maintenance of that equipment, and how to choose good equipment and all those different factors. And then chapter 3 and chapter 7, those are definitely like my two favorites because chapter 3 is about environment. When you have an optimal indoor environment, that's basically what you need to have success. And that's one of the biggest struggle is, okay, how do I create an environment that can closely mimic Mother Nature, but indoors with all these different pieces of equipment and control and operate them in a way that provides a pretty stable environment for the plants. There's not swings with humidity and BPD and all these other things that is always going to stress the plant via abiotic stress, and that's eventually going to cause probably some biotic stress through pathogens or these other things that we talked about before. And then chapter 7 is plant training, and it's about creating an optimal canopy because your canopy definitely needs to be structured so it can best utilize the optimal light environment that you created. And it starts when plants are young, especially when you grow bigger plants with a plant count, which a lot of our customers or people out there in New York, they can have 4 plants each. Most of these states, you're allowed a very small number of plants. So growing, a very small plant might not produce enough medicine for you and your family over the next, couple months until you harvest again. So plant training and getting the most out of your plants is pretty big time. And that starts very early. So we walk it all the way from, taking them out of the cloner all the way through to defoliating towards the end of the harvest. So but yeah, chapter 7 is probably the favorite because that's like where the art comes into play too. It's like creating
Yeah.
that canopy of that plant. It's like there's an art to it, and when you get to step back and see like a beautiful canopy, it makes you feel good. So but yeah, I think people really enjoy the chapter 1 and 2 as well, just because like I said, there wasn't much information about setting up an optimal indoor grow back when we made it available.
Yeah. Brian, what are your favorites?
I think, my favorite thing that's kind of kind of came over me later on as I've kind of started to see the impact. I've been more boots on the ground to all the grow stores and a lot of the facilities, and talking with all of the growers that have purchased the books, and realizing how important the post harvest section was. I didn't realize before we put this book out, you don't really get to talk to too many cultivars and facilities, until we put the book out. That kind of opened up our network to kind of get on the insides of people. And you realize that a lot of people struggle with just the last bit, the last thing.
Yeah.
They grow this plant, they do all these things right. They're wondering why, they're just not, holding in that moisture. Their plant's not drying up right. It's not tasting good and all those things. And so I think Matthew did a really good job, structuring out all the things to do to optimize the post harvest. A lot of things are out there that really screw people up. So that section is really big for me. But I think the other thing is the pictures. All those pictures that we took, man, it took us a long time to get those pictures done, just because each harvest, as these things would come, we only had a certain window to get these pictures done. All those plants are in-house plants. So every picture in the book, besides one that was actually a terpene pick that we didn't have the trichome, that we didn't actually have the camera to be able to do that. Everything else was done in house. So all those plants, we grew and had to get them ready for those certain things. So there was just times where we wanted to make sure that we wanted to check out one more round to the pictures to come in just a little clearer and things like that. So I think those have been so useful. Just hearing the feedback right now, what I'm most proud of personally is, and we've had the book out for a little bit over a year now. We're in over 90 stores, hydro stores across the United States. We sold the book in now 26 different countries. We've had a lot of people, upwards of 3,000 books sold so far. And so haven't had any bad reviews, haven't had anyone call us back saying they want their money back or they're displeased with the book and that the information in the book has did them wrong. We're starting to see all of the success stories of people making these changes, making adjustments with the plant training and seeing the success. So it has been really exciting to be a part of the journey and see the goal of putting something out there for the community. And then now finally, after a year's time, seeing some of those success stories of it, right? Because when you, like you said,
Mhm.
you got the book a couple months ago, maybe a month or so ago, and it's hard to get through it, right? You're not going to have time in your busy life to read every single word. So the time aspect of now of having it out there, having people really consumed the information and applied the information, and now seeing the success and the happiness has been really my favorite thing of it all. Just because that was our goal, right? Empower other growers to have success, to feed their community with clean cannabis. At the end of the day, we talk about it all the time. You don't realize until you really step back and think about how many people you affect from each harvest. When you put out a harvest, even at a small scale of 4 pounds, 4 pounds passed out in the community affects a ton of people. And we've seen a lot more than 4 pounds be affected from the yield science practices. So we're excited about just trying to be a small impact that brings up the community and hopefully is an everlasting resource
Mhm.
for growers.
And it's definitely for, like you said earlier, like from everybody to the hobby grower who just has room for one or two plants in a tent, all the way up to, large scale cultivation facilities, which is amazing, right? A lot of these books were kind of written for the small scale hobby or backyard grower, and we've all seen, MSOs try and fail, and some are doing it right and many of them are not. And I think that the larger the facility gets, the more difficult it is to manage, and doing things like, dialing in microclimates and, having outbreaks of something here or there. And then, the low stress training or high stress training, defoliation, the manpower that it takes to get those things done, if that's what you want to do, is difficult, right? With a large scale cultivation facility. So you kind of have to figure out what you can do in the space that you're working with. And I think that to cover all of those bases and not just have it be a blanket, oh, this is how you do it, because it changes.
100. What's been really cool too is like a lot of the commercial growers that have got our books for their new employees and their employees that have been going on, and just kind of helping teach what to look for, even if they might not be doing some of those plant touching training things in their system. They still now have an idea once they read the book at what to look for, and to be able to help them along their system that they have in place.
So is there in the book, do you cover the plant? Like, you start with, your grow area, your lighting, and then you do the equipment, and then what it was, chapter three. But
The environment, and that's
the
basically just
environment.
maintaining an optimal environment. Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess at some point, yeah, you can't put everything in one book, right?
Yep.
You have to
Yep.
kind of cut yourself off at some point and be like, focus. Like, what are
Mhm.
we working towards here? Did you find yourselves having to do that at certain points where you're like, we're not teaching people about the plant. This is about cultivation. Like,
The degree of, I mean, maybe I would say that there's like certain topics that we would love to maybe have expanded on in the book, but at the time we weren't experts at. We'd only been testing for a couple of years, so like living soil is one of those. To see the medicinal value and compare it with the traditional growing methods of like growing in coco coir or rock wool, we prefer coco coir. So, but we were experts in coco coir, and so we made sure we stuck to what we knew would benefit people. We didn't want to be like, hey, this is something that we just started doing, and we want to try to give you information on it. But there's certain things that we wanted to add in there, but it's like technology is going to keep coming out, so we're going to keep delaying the book by testing new and new things. So yeah, we had to draw the line there. We had to at a certain point be like, hey, we want to test everything and just keep going, but we got to put this out, so that we can help others instead of just testing this new one variable. But yeah, under
mhm.
canopy lighting, far right, there's certain things that we had to just stick to and be done with it. But we want to make sure that we gave people the why on everything that we provided, because like we said, all these systems are different. We wanted to be able to help the small scale hobbyist to the large commercial grower. If you have the why, the fundamentals, then you can have success, and you're actually being educated and thinking about the plant in a way that is more fundamental and gets down to like the basis of things. And once you understand those, then you can make adjustments and go from there.
Right. So are you still testing and writing? And do you see like a part two or a second edition coming out with more stuff? Like, was this just a get it out kind of thing, and you got more work to do and more for us to read?
Well, yeah, always continually testing, because we just always want to be the best growers that we can be. At this time, we're kind of looking around like, hey, there's some other aspects to growing here that we would like to provide people information on. But looking at how long it may take us to feel comfortable becoming an expert, I think we're looking at more at empowering others who have been doing a lot of good work in certain areas, reaching out to them, and then basically providing them a platform and collaborating so that they can get really tried and true information out to other people in areas that we're not as adept at. So I think we're looking more at helping, working with other people to help get their message out there and provide good information to people that we know is reliable and will help them out, give them success.
Brian, I think you had something to add there.
Just strategic partnerships has really been a lot of our focus right now, just because like Matthew said, it took years to do some of the research that is put on a few of those pages, right? And so we respect that, and we just because we have a platform and that we've came out with something that people trust, we don't want to lose that trust, right? So we'll never put out anything that's new information that isn't tried and true. So the under canopy lighting is something new that we haven't really tested enough, but there's more testing that's coming out. So hopefully getting more things out there that other people have tested that we can put out maybe as a free resource for people to see what's going on, and then they can make an educated decision on if they want it for their grow. Just kind of making yield science still be that platform that's trusted, right, by people,
Mm.
because a lot of the home growers, they go into these stores, they go into places, and there's such good marketing out there, and there's kickbacks and all these other things where we want people to really get the right stuff to where they can have success. So we're really focusing on growing our brand, getting it into the colleges, getting it into places where people are going to actually use the book and be able to get jobs, right? I think there's a new industry where commercial facilities are looking for educated employees, new growers and things like that as the facilities pop up. So we're trying to continue to be a resource for people to use to maybe be that reason they get the job at the commercial facility. So we're working on a lot of things on those ends to help the community as well.
So are you partnering with cultivators to test, some of these things that you have in the book or things that you haven't put in the book that you want more data on?
We haven't done anything. It's just been our facilities now. But a lot of the stuff, just for an example of like we are one of our friends, Country Roots, he has done living soil for a long time, a lot of soil testing, things like that. So want to work with him on some of the procedures and things that he's found to help the living soil growers, right? We get a lot of questions from all these different types of growers. Obviously we grow in cocoa and our books focused in on cocoa to where we want to be able to bring in some other experts in the field to where we can help those growers that are maybe doing something that's an opposite system that we're doing.
Living soil versus cocoa. Living soil presents a whole nother set of opportunities because you have to keep not just the plants alive, right? You've got another whole living ecosystem that you're also nurturing and taking care of and balancing and can get out of whack, out of control. So I moved out to New Jersey in 2021, working with a company who was growing a CBD type flower in the forest. We had hoop houses using aquaponic methods and having the fish and the worms and the bacterial colonies and all of the things, all of it has to work together. And if one thing fails, it's just a cascade of events. And there was one time when the electrical company that we were working with was just incompetent, basically. We had two separate electrical lines coming in. They billed us for one, but sent the other bill to the wrong place or something, so we never got it. So for whatever reason, they never contacted us or anything, and they just shut the electricity off. It happened to be the house that we had all the fish in. I walked in the morning and like just dead fish everywhere, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And so like I hooked up the generator and ran a hose out and just blew like oxygen into the water. Managed to save, I don't know, maybe 10% of the fish, but that was like devastating because you can't buy, fish that are this big. You can, but they're really expensive. And to replace, it was like 350 fish or something like that. Would have been really expensive. And so then, the fish colony goes down, then the bacterial colony goes down, then the plants suffer because they don't, and you've got to like, supplement your plants with nitrogen because they're not getting enough nutrient. Like it's just crazy the way that you have to manage a grow like that. And you have to kind of be three steps ahead of any problem that might occur because it's not something that you can react to quickly. Like it's a whole, yeah, thing. There's aeroponics, aquaponics, hydroponics, living soil, no-till, indoor, outdoor, like all of the different things all present different, you know, opportunities to learn. You cover all of the different growing methods in your book?
No, we mainly are focused on cocoa.
Oh, you just
There's
said
a form of hydroponics, but yeah, we do make a mention to living soil because we have seen a rise, and we were lucky enough to have one of our employees. He's very big into living soil, and he got us to really start testing with it a couple years ago, and yeah, definitely have liked the results. It's a bit of a mindset shift when you're used to growing with fertilizer and cocoa, but once you can compartmentalize that and make that shift. It's actually a very easy system and very beautiful to watch it grow. It's just getting the parameters right. The fundamentals. Once you get the
what's
fundamentals
better?
right, um, it's hard to say which. I mean, I personally I do prefer smoking like living soil personally. Yep. But I mean, very close, very close.
And it probably depends on what you're looking for. Do you see like a difference in complexity or the chemodiversity in plants grown in something inert like cocoa versus something like that's grown in a living soil closer to, what the plants would experience in an outdoor setting?
Yeah, there is, and there's actually like a different terpenoid profile that will get pushed, whether you're growing with fertilizer salts or you're growing it the organic method. So yeah, it's pretty interesting there. Definitely some different effects. For example, like we had one strain that when we grew it in fertilizer, it would get people. This is anecdotal, but people would get anxiety. It's just a very potent strain. And then once we grew it in living soil, that specific strain, people didn't give us that feedback anymore. So that was an interesting tidbit right there. I didn't never seen it with another strain, but that was interesting. Yeah, because with the organic, it's always going to be more diversity for sure, and maybe increase secondary metabolism. So you might get definitely a different terpenoid profile and different cannabinoid profile. And what's interesting too is like we've actually seen where it is a little bit higher THC percentage, which I would always have thought that it would be higher in the fertilizer grown system. So that was something that was really interesting to me in our testing.
Something that I think about is that it's not like we as scientists think we do a not a great job of looking for the not obvious. We're looking for the things that occur in the highest abundance, the highest THC and CBD, or, the top 3 terpenes, or even the top 20 terpenes. And we're missing a whole lot of compounds that are produced by the cannabis plant, and that abundance does not always equal potency. And a cup of salt is not the same as a cup of sugar, right? I think we, as me as a scientist, I'm not a chemist, but I think we could do a lot better at actually looking for the answers a little bit more deeply than we have been. What are you guys most excited about in the cultivation space? Like, I know that lighting has come a long way. I know that PGRs have been a source of contention, even though plants make their own PGRs. I think it's natural versus synthetic, maybe is the argument, not so much PGRs, right?
Yep.
And then, just different, I think lighting is probably the thing that has changed maybe the most. I don't know. Like, what's your, I want to hear what you
For
guys.
me, it's the lighting testing that they're finding all these different spectrums and the difference of all the testing of how they're going with the spectrums, and then also just the under canopy lighting and seeing how it's maximizing the underbuds and things like that. It's crazy to see how far we've come. We were talking about it earlier, just in the last 10 years, like how much lighting has changed, and just the way you can really control these lights too. Just the controller aspect, being able to really dial everything in, has been really cool for me to see.
Yeah, the only other thing I was gonna add is just just increased dissolved oxygen in the water now. Running up at like 20, 22 ppm is very interesting and cool to see. Like a raindrop, I believe, is like 22 ppm of DO, and you're seeing like that helps a lot with pathogenic pressure and increased microbial activity in the root zone. Yeah, something I'm excited about to see more and more people implementing.
Under canopy lighting is a really interesting thing to me. Can you talk about what that is and what benefits, if any, it might pose in like cost benefit analysis?
Yeah, we've been hearing. I mean, the results are definitely in, and yeah, they are definitely beneficial. Yield increase of about 30%. A lot of people are finding it too. It helps a lot because basically, when you're trying to deliver as much light as you can to the plant so it can yield the most, when you're delivering it all through top lighting, it can be stressful to the plant, especially, indoors. Like when you're outside, you might get cloud cover for a minute. The plants are going to get a little bit of a break. Indoors, it's more consistent, constant PPFD throughout that 12-hour photo period or, veg, whatever it is.
Mm.
And so by using the under canopies, people have been able to reduce their top PPFD and lower a little bit of stress there, but also still be delivering a good PPFD to all the plant surfaces. And then same thing, the sun's millions of miles away, so if you're 40 feet in the air or you're on the on the very ground, there's no real difference in PPFD that is getting received. But indoors, over the course of an inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, 6 inches, that PPFD is dramatically different, with artificial light sources. So by being able to deliver light, to the bottom of the plant, shooting upwards, and then having light shooting down, you're more realistically more mimicking the sun and how the plant, gets light penetration or would perceive light outdoors. It would be getting a more uniform PPFD from top to bottom, not just only at the top. So it's been big time for a lot of people, especially when they're growing, 9 plants per light, which is pretty standard at the big MSOs or big commercial facilities. At those instances, the under canopies are just absolutely massive. But when you're growing bigger plants, it's a little more difficult to implement, but I still do think that you would see beneficial results.
All right, Brian, you're the one that brought it up.
No, he just knocked it out. He knocked it out of the park. That was exactly what I was thinking. Just with also it also a lot of the facilities that are using the under canopy lights are also it helps with having the remember we're talking about the time for the plant training. If you have the under canopy lights, you don't have to put as much effort and manpower towards the plant training. So we've seen that that's also been huge for some of these MSOs where they only have like 5 supervisors who actually know what they're doing. So it started to really changed the whole dynamic of growing, right? I've really been out for a year or so now. So just kind of seeing the experiments with them and seeing the really the growth of how it's gonna help. I think it's gonna be cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
We
I think under canopy has been around for a long time, but they're just really starting to apply it more and more towards cannabis.
okay.
Yeah, I'm just saying like the in general market,
Oh,
right? Yes, because actually, like you said, yeah, we've been talking to a lot of cultivators, like we've seen it on the sidebars and things like
yeah.
that, and where there was some stuff, but it's cool to see just the general conciseness of the industry saying, hey, under canopies are right around that 30% increase. So just those numbers alone in a time where financially it's huge. Those numbers are massive. So these cultivations are really starting to dial in those little things.
Gotcha. So, Brian, you said you were an athlete, but like, what's your background? Like, did you go to, I'm assuming that you went to college to do something, and Matthew, I'm assuming you
Yep.
went to college to do something.
Yep. So I'm a communications background. I do all the marketing and sales. Over the course of my, 7 years with the company, I've learned a lot about the plant. And a lot of times actually it's funny, people all the time are like, man, you've been growing for years, just when I have a conversation. And I'm like, no, well, I've been in the garden for years, but I always give the garden, the growers the respect of I don't even consider myself a grower. I never tell people I'm actual grower, even though I've worked in our facility for 7 years. I know quite a bit, but my real passion has been, getting the book out there, getting our brand out there, brand awareness, the community driven side of things, sales, helping with, some of the branding and just kind of the direction of where the company was going. Matthew has been really our backbone and our science and the reason why we have a brand in a book.
What's your background,
For
Matthew?
me, yeah, I went to college for business administration. I always plan on like being an entrepreneur and not so much, just chasing like a certain dollar amount or anything, but I always wanted the freedom of, being able to choose your own direction and have total control over your life. And, obviously fell in love with cannabis, throughout my younger years and kind of seeing Michigan, made it to where you could do that back in 2012. It was a opportunity or possibility. So, I was like, this is what I want to do for a while,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I started with the George Cervantes Medical Marijuana Bible. I was actually, still at school, had astronomy classes. I'd put white tape over the book, and so I'd be sitting in class and learn about growing weed while I was, finishing school.
Yeah, when I went back to do my PhD, that was the probably the first, I think that was that book and the ethnobotany book by Clark and Merlin. Those were the two first books that I got. And I brought home the Grower's Bible, and my son, who was about 14 at the time, grabbed it from me, and before I knew it, he knew more than I did, which I didn't really know that much. But I was in there asking him questions about trichomes and all this, stuff. And then, eventually my knowledge overtook his, but he
Yeah.
he started sucking up, all this information like a sponge, and we started doing, the Colorado thing, home grow in the backyard. I've never been a great grower. I'm not a good gardener. I'm a set it and forget it kind of girl. I'm the kind of person that if it dies, it was never meant to be. If it's overgrown, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Mhm.
I don't trim. I don't. defoliate. I don't do anything to my plants. If it takes more effort than I want to give it, then that's not the plant for me.
And cannabis is a pretty high effort plant.
I feel like cannabis is interesting. It can be as hard or as easy as you want to make it. You can pour a ton of money in. You can buy high-end lights. You could have an RO system. You can spend money on all these nutrients and stuff, or you can just stick it in soil and maybe put a drip system in and then, I don't know, throw fish shit on it whenever you remember. I've been pretty successful, but like I said, if it dies, it dies. But the ones that live do great. And I think that's because they're resilient because I'm not super I don't coddle my plants, and I feel like actually we've kind of done some of these plants a disservice by you know yeah, coddling them, giving them every single thing they want, making sure they've got the perfect lights and the perfect water and the perfect nutrients. And I feel like, now we're losing some of the diversity that can lead to being able to adapt well to an adverse environment. Yeah.
No, you're so right. I feel like it's went from, instead of being really diverse, to really consistent.
Hmm.
Everything they're trying to do is all based around consistency, and that's where the environment has got to be perfect, and that's where all the water system, the data points, that's where they're really trying to be consistent. Where before we had that, you would have the diversity of the plants, and they wouldn't all come out the same and things like that.
Do you see what direction is this industry going in? The cultivation specifically.
I feel like that there's the gap of either the home grower and the person that's been growing for a long time and likes to grow their own vegetables, loves to grow their own medicine, they're going to continue to do so. But a lot of the states that have already became legal and legalization, where a lot of the commercial scale growers are started to take over more, where it's you don't see as many craft growers being able to make it in some of these more mature markets, California, Colorado, Michigan, where it's starting. If you don't have very good branding and marketing, it's going to be very difficult for those smaller craft facilities to stay afloat, just because of the way that the bigger MSOs can get that price per pound down, the way they can produce it for cheaper, and then they're selling it cheaper with the deals and things like that. So it's interesting because as each state goes, they're putting different laws in and they're changing the ways that they do it every time as well. So it'll be interesting, but I feel like it's going to be more towards the commercial cannabis.
But there's always going to be people growing their own as well. Just like, you can go get tomatoes at the supermarket, but a lot of people prefer to grow their own tomatoes. So
Hmm.
I think, the home grower thing market's always going to grow. I feel like the commercial market's also going to grow. But as Brian said, it might make it difficult for, the craft operators in the future.
Because I feel like there's enough room for everybody. I mean, in, I know people hate comparing cannabis to alcohol, but in the beer industry, we've got giant, multi-state, the Budweisers and the Coors, and that's not going to go away. But they also haven't cannibalized all the smaller batch
It would
craft.
just have to, my big thing is it would have to change the way that the laws are for each state, because right now the reason why the craft breweries work well is because you can go into there and consume the brewery at the location, right? People like the craft brewery, like the vibe of the place, they like the people, they want to go there, maybe get food. You can't do that with cannabis. You just go to the dispensary and you pick it up and you take it home. So
Hmm.
where they're at it, they're in the thing where it's a cost issue. It's they don't, just because it's cool to go into the craft dispensary. If it's cheaper next door by a lot, they go there because of the price, because they're not actually consuming it. And so I feel like that the craft allowed to have a consumption lounge, right, where they were to have people to create more of a community aspect. I think it's just going to be difficult when you have a jars cannabis where they're in pretty much every state. They're buying millions of dollars worth of product every week, where the craft is producing that at a certain, only a random harvest, where if they don't sell it for a certain price point, they can't pay their employees and they won't be able to go. where jars down the street can offer products for the same price they got them for just to keep people in the door because they have that many products to sell.
But not all craft breweries, like, for example, I live in a really pretty small town in New Jersey. Our local liquor store has a whole section dedicated to micro and craft breweries, right? And you can try stuff you've never heard of. There's some breweries in there that, like, my boyfriend is a beer connoisseur, so he's like, "Oh, this is a great brewery," and he'll try, what they put out. So I don't think it's about being able to consume craft beer at the brewery necessarily. The products are available, they're on the shelf, and I think that word of mouth gets around, especially with apps where people can rate things. If there's a producer that consistently gets high ratings with the consumer, then people might start looking for those products. Like, oh, I know these guys are great. They're out of Boston or whatever, but if you can find their products on the shelf, and you might actually want to pay more for that product because you know that it is an excellent product that people rate consistently high versus, Curaleaf or True Leaf or whatever the case may be, where they consistently get meh
Mm-hmm.
pretty
No,
often.
and I
I
totally
hope so.
agree with that. It'll just be again based off of I'm going off of the laws where it's state by state where that wouldn't affect it, but where you're saying where it's like Boston and I'm in Michigan, I think that would work great. It's just going to have to be federally legal to where we can
Maybe.
put,
Well, yeah, the
you
big
know,
guys are always going to be making the money and they're not going anywhere and they're going to be able to react potentially, well, I don't know, faster? I don't know if that's true or not, than a craft operation. But also think that, a craft operation is going to have, they don't need to have as many personnel. They don't have to spend as much money on training. They probably don't have as much turnover. They can actually keep an eye, a close eye on their whole grow without spending exorbitant amounts of money for various systems and software and automated system. Like, I feel like there's pros and cons to both, but the multi-state operators, the big cultivation facilities, I feel like they spend a lot of money just to get their product out the door, passing testing or not. Uh and then there's the whole, not passing and the irradiation issue that's going on. Uh you know what I mean?
No, I totally agree. I just it'll be interesting to see how those laws make it work. Just because the one thing I'll challenge is with craft breweries and stuff, you don't need a brewery facility to have a craft product, but for a regulated cannabis facility, you do have to have that. So for them to be able to sell their product continuously, be able to pay those light bills and things like that that come with an indoor
License.
grow, license fees and stuff like that. Where if they're not able to sell it for that craft price, and it just won't be able to be feasible for a long time unless, like you said, they don't have labor fees, they don't have those things. They're doing it, in house. Where there will be those people always, like you said. I just don't know if there'll be as many as you see with.
With
It's
the brewery.
A Michigan grocery store. There's so many craft breweries, like so many that are sold randomly. I just don't know if it'll be as many or if they'll just be kind of a sections at the dispensary where there's like, hey, this is
The locals.
Yeah.
the locals, yeah, and maybe they'll be sweet where there'll be a local license when there's a federal thing. Maybe there'll be a cheaper license where someone locally could afford it to be able to put their products in the stores. Because right now in Michigan, it'd be very difficult for a local person to get that done. What we're seeing right now is stores are closing up daily. They let in over 900 dispensaries in Michigan. We're a pretty small state, and that's really affected the success of those dispensaries and cultivations.
That sucks.
It does. It goes state by state, right? There's really not been too much consistency.
And the whole pay to play model is just not sustainable, because the big operators have all the money And it just is that the little guys are not going to be able to cough up as much money.
It literally just takes away a whole group of people that could be adding such value to the community. It goes back on similar to why we're kind of starting to switch. One thing that we're trying to do at Yield Sciences, we're trying to come up with maybe a certificate or something to where when you read the book, maybe take a test to where you can, show that value of the
Mhm.
book, because getting into some of these facilities, it's hard to show how are you going to do it, what have you done and got knowledge to get a job for job placement and things like that. So we're trying to hopefully eventually provide another resource for people to be able to continue their careers in cannabis.
You should offer a course where, they read the book, they you give them the lessons and the lectures, maybe even have videos of, walking through a grow or whatever, and then, at the end they take an exam and then they get a certificate. And
And that's what we're working on right now. We want to empower just those people that want to get into the industry that might not have the ability to afford a college, or maybe they haven't got an opportunity at their local grows. And this would be an opportunity where they read the book, take the tests, and now they have a legit education to go off of.
well, hey, if you need any help with that, I've been developing and teaching courses on cannabis for years now, and we have a certification program, and I'd be happy to help you out.
Be
That's
awesome.
something.
Be awesome.
No, we definitely want to bring this up for sure, because
That'd be awesome. Because it's hard. Like my PhD is actually in biological education, the school that I went to. All of the PhD degrees are in education. So it's chemistry education, biological education, history education. But in addition to that education piece where you learn how to teach and teach how to learn and do all the statistics and study student, retention and things like that, you learn how to, structure exams and how to create a syllabus and all that stuff. Then I had the whole other research side of my project, which was, of course, cannabis genetics. So it was like kind of like a double whammy PhD. So, but I learned a lot, things that I wouldn't have thought of not having that education background as that piece of the puzzle.
no, that's awesome.
Yeah, that sounds like a perfect fit for sure.
So yeah, we'll have to talk after the show about collaborating and helping. Like I feel like you're helping so much of the community, as I said at the beginning, like it's not just home growers. It's more than that. It's so much more than that. Like this book is literally for anybody who's interested in growing cannabis, no matter your level, if you're a novice or an expert, or whether you're in a small, home grow, you've just got one plant, or, you're in Colorado and you've got 12 plants, or, you're a craft grower or an MSO. Like this book is for everybody. Or even if you just like reading or looking at pictures.
No, we appreciate that. And we also, it does come with an audio. So that's a free audio book with every purchase. There's a card that goes into the
There,
book
don't
right
scan
there.
it.
Just for, those people and groups that maybe want to play it while their team's trimming, right? And get other people to listen to it, or on your drive into work, want to get a little bit of more information. For me, I'm a big audiobook person, so wanted to make sure that we had really the ability for everyone's different learners. So
Yeah,
there's that as well.
for sure. And the book is nice in that sense that you do have so many great images, pictures, charts, graphics to really drive home the point, because I am a big picture girl myself. If I buy a book and it doesn't have pictures in it, it's never getting read. If I if there's a study that comes out and it doesn't have pretty pictures to go along with what they found, I'm not going to read it.
That's
No,
awesome.
I feel you. I'm a visual learner too. I like it. I like it.
All right. Well, is there anything else you guys want to like talk about, cover, passions, or you know, gripes, peeves, things that you really, need to set the record straight, because this is your time, your soapbox to stand on and talk to folks.
I don't have
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
Nothing.
No, nothing. Honestly, I feel like you did a great job. I mean, I personally, I love where we're at with. with it. I'm not a big complainer. I
Yeah.
try not to.
The plan doesn't get you very far.
Matthew, I didn't get a chance to stalk you online because it seems like you don't have a very large
He's not
online presence.
stalkable.
I'm a behind the scenes, hard to find. This is actually my first podcast I've ever been on. So,
Oh,
yep, yep.
cool.
So, yeah, I normally, I like to stay behind the scenes and, yeah,
It
you know,
goes back
do
to
my work. What is it?
it goes back to Anna about we didn't want at first me being able to go out and tell people I'm not a grower, totally diffused them from being like, oh, who are you? So we've kind of kept Matthew in the back. But now that everyone has loved the book and had nothing but great things to say about it, and we wanted to make sure that we're having him come out more and talk and be able to communicate with his peers to where we can get those collaborations and really elevate. We just wanted to at first to kind of slow roll it so it wasn't more of like we just didn't want it to be an ego thing.
Yeah.
Being able to kind of have that conversation after and say why and explain why. We've had a good response. We just didn't want to have that response where it's like, who's Matthew Gibbons? Haven't seen him, don't know, where he's been, and then disregard the book. Where we've had it to where we put the book out, and all these great people have referenced it and talked about it, and then they want to know from there who wrote the book instead of it
Yeah.
being a negative approach. So that's kind of why we've went this game plan. But as we slowly get going, it's been great, just really opening up to who we are and what we're about, because at the end of the day, we just wanted yield science to be something that really did right by the people and the community. At the end of the day, that was number one. And this wasn't a something that's going to make us a bunch of money and retire us or anything like that. It was just something that we were super proud of, that when someone says yield science, they know we stand for the people and that we put something out that Matthew and I put our whole heart and soul into the project and our, team, really.
And I feel like I met you guys backwards. Like the first thing I saw was the book sitting on the table, and I was like, "Oh, look, this looks interesting." And I opened it up, and I was like, "Wow, this is really fucking cool." And then you were standing right there, and you're like, "Oh yeah, that's our book." And then I bought it from you, and then we connected on LinkedIn. Like we weren't connected on LinkedIn, which is
Yeah.
usually, that's the first way that I know people. And then I, stalked you to find pictures for to promote the podcast. And I'm like, oh my God, he was a professional hockey player. I found a picture of you and cute little dog, and I'm a dog lover. So now my last question for you is, what's your dog's name?
Maple. And so
Maple.
Maple's been a huge part of our lives. We got her 4 years ago, and my fiance, we're actually getting married in May. She was a preschool teacher, and when she begged me to get the dog. We got the dog, and she was like, "I want to get her an Instagram," and I'm like, "Get the dog an Instagram?" She ended up getting this Instagram to like 18,000 followers. Completely changed career paths. Now is fully submerged in social media. She's worked for Gary Vee and done social media for like the Super Bowl ads and stuff like that. And now she actually works the Detroit Lions and runs all of
Oh,
their stuff. So it went from, so
this
the
is
dog
Maple you're
actually,
talking about, right? Maple
Ma-
runs.
Maple the Mini.
Maple pretty much started all of this
She
for
runs the social
Julie.
media for the Detroit Lions.
She's pretty much trained Julie to do it. But so the dog's been a huge impact on our lives. So it's been.
I have an old 15-year-old wiener dog. Her name's Dottie Bacon James. I feel like
I
I
love
love
that.
that.
Maple and bacon go together. Do you have any animals, Matthew?
Yeah, I do. Yep, I do got a dog, Bella. She was just in here a second ago. Yeah, she's a shop dog. I take her to the shop, and yeah, she hangs out in the office. She has her little bed in there. Yeah, I mean, every day, she's driving around, got her little head out the window. Wintertime in Michigan's tough. If it's above 10 degrees, I'll roll that back window down for her and I'll brave it. But anything below that, I'm like, but yeah, Bella, not today.
Wiener wiener dogs are notoriously bad at going outside if it's wet or snowy.
I don't want to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, so these last 3 weeks in New Jersey have been challenging for sure. But, we have tile throughout the house and just, rugs and stuff that we can wash, so it's not too bad, but and she's 15. She can do whatever the hell she wants.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
she
no,
earned her
100%.
10%.
Yeah, 100%. She's earned it. She's earned her stripes.
Yeah, she has. All right, you guys. Well, if you don't have anything else to add, Well, good.
No, well,
It's
yeah, oh yeah. Thank you so much again
Yeah.
been
for
awesome. It's been
having us on, and we really appreciate it. And like you said, it was a cool one because it was Matthew's first one, and I wanted to make sure he was on. I thought it was a good fit. Um,
aw. Well,
you
I
know,
feel special.
Thank you so much.
I'll have a place in your heart always.
Always, yeah.
And vice
yes,
versa. No, I mean, I was so excited to have you guys on because, like I said, I'm super impressed with the book, just the way that you guys went at it, and your whole ethos is really just everything that I hope and pray that everybody in this industry has. I think you guys are, just got a really great vibe, and your hearts are in the right place, and it's for the plant and for the people kind of attitude, which is my kind of people.
Yeah,
well,
100%.
I felt the same way. I mean, right when we met you. That's why when you asked us to come on the podcast, I thought it was like a no brainer. To be honest, we get asked to come on podcasts quite a bit now, just because the book, and I try to steer away from a lot of them just because I feel like with our book, there's a lot of the same conversation but I thought this was a great opportunity for us to kind of show our dynamic and also love what you do and what you're doing for the community. And so we wanted to make sure that we were support you. And if there's anything that we can do, obviously going forward, you let us know. Love to support. We try to help out in any way we can.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. And I do think that we should connect about education,
Seriously.
collaboration prospects. I want to help you guys too. So
No, that would be great. I would love to pick your brain on that.
Or thing I will add too, yeah, with the rise of AI now and how prevalent it is, I just want to make sure that it's noted that the entire book was written. AI did not get used, one at any moment throughout the entire book. So for writing the book, so I just want to make sure that that's good. Because now it's so prevalent and people, they're like, oh, there's no name. Is it written by AI? And it's like definitely not. It definitely was not the case. So I just want
that's
to make sure.
good to know. And I should have asked that, but I mean, it's pretty obvious to me it's not written by AI, but
100%. If you read it, yeah, you would
yeah,
definitely.
It's funny, Doctor Lemmy. That was one of the
yeah.
first funny things because I reached out to him on Instagram and I said, I want to send him a book. I sent him a book. He got the book and he's like, "There's no name. I can't find anyone." He's like, "Was this AI?" And then he started reading it and he's like, "No way, this is AI. This is someone wrote this." You
Well,
know,
it makes it
so
difficult to cite it as a source because there's no authors, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
no, that is true.
but I
Yeah.
mean, there's only one book called Yield Science.
And in the future, maybe future
I
copies that we
think
get printed.
in the next round of copies that we order, we'll probably put his name in there. I think it was just going to be we ordered originally 5,000 copies. We're almost through 3,500 or so around that range now. Once we get through these copies and we order some more, I'm thinking that will be an addition we add just because, like you said, for sourcing and things, and
And
obviously for
collaborating.
Just out of curiosity, was this self-published or did you go with a
Yeah,
publishing company?
self-published. Yep. So yeah, we
Oh,
were making decisions on the type of paper, the binding. Like I made sure the Smithsonian binding, so it was lay flat. That's an extra five
we
dollars per book just to get that
we
binding.
took the extra papers. We took the papers into the facility and literally had neat like our gloves on and were ripping through the pages to see if they were going to be able to be durable for someone that was actually using it in their grow. Because how I imagined it was, hey, you're at the transplant section, you got your book open on a table at by the transplant. So we even threw cocoa on it and made sure that it went through all the test of the ringer. Because I was like, if we get paper that is thin and they have the sticky gloves and it sticks and it rips their pages, that's going to be a defect. So really, we didn't want to cut any corners when it came to the quality of the book, just because of those things. You know how gardens are;
yeah,
they're dirty.
yeah, yeah. And water is no friend of pages in books,
No.
usually.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is one of the books you took into the facility, but I feel like my book smells like weed, but it might just be because of where.
Yeah.
You know
My
why? Probably because it's just in my backpack with all my weed.
that could be it too. Or
That's when
or
you know you grow
mine.
good fucking good weed. That's awesome. Smelt up the book. It's like, yeah, we got a
I thought
perfume we're spraying on them.
That's what I was thinking. Maybe you had some terpene blend or something that you like perfume your books with.
No, that's all natural. That's all natural, Ashley. That's
Well,
all
don't
natural.
stop storing it like you do because that's just a pleasant bonus.
I love that. It actually gets me excited. That's yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much again. I love talking to you, and we need to talk again real soon about. All
Yes.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Looking forward to
right.
it.
Have a good rest of your
Sounds good.
week.
Okay,
You
cool.
too.
All
Thank you so
right.
much.
Bye, guys.
All right. Bye.
Bye.